Guys, before we get started with this video, I wanted to take a few minutes to let you know about our online coffee shop. If you're like me and you enjoy a good cup of coffee, come over, check out our online store linked below this video. You can pick you up some great coffee as well as other merchandise. Help support the channel. Get yourself a great cup of coffee. Link down below. How's it going, guys? What I wanted to do in this video is talk with you all about the new movie Sound of Freedom. I had mentioned a while back that I had intended to go and watch the movie, and recently I did. We did go over to a theater not far from here. We just took the day, went out, got us a nice meal, and saw the movie. And I will have to say that I would recommend every one of you guys go see this movie. I think that one of the things that this movie is going to do is raise awareness for human trafficking. It is a serious problem. It is a much more serious problem than a lot of people think about. And I wouldn't only say that you should go watch the movie, I would also encourage you to listen to some of the interviews of the folks involved with this movie, including Tim, the agent who is basically the centerpiece of this movie. And listen to some of the stories that he tells you about this. You'll get a better understanding of the movie in general. One of the things about the movie, and this is probably going to be a little bit of a spoiler, so if any of you guys are going to see the movie, you don't want to hear any spoilers, I'm going to go ahead and warn you, there may be a few. One of the things that the creators of this movie did was take real incidents that Tim had gone through, and they compressed it into a single story. Listening to the interviews with the producer, that was one of the things that he struggled with for quite a while. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Tim Poole. Timcast IRL, go look him up. He did an interview with the producers, with the agent, as well as a few other folks involved in this movie. And it's a real good podcast to get a good understanding of the movie, of some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that happened during this movie. And when you hear some of the things that happened as part of the making of this movie, they already have a good plot for a sequel. One of the things that they talked about in the interview, which I would suggest you go listen to it, was that during the making of this movie, which there again, it took them 8 years to get this movie released, and they can tell you more about that. But during the making of it, they actually ran an operation down there to rescue a bunch of kids, and filming the movie itself ended up saving the lives of a lot of kids, simply because they had the people in place. They had opportunity down in Colombia because they filmed a lot of this movie in places where some of these incidents happen. And so that is kind of one of the stories behind the story. What you see in the movie is based on real events, and you will get a better understanding of those events if you listen to some of the podcasts. I know that the guys have been on with Jordan Peterson. They've been on the Sean Ryan show. And this movie is one that I really hope brings awareness to human trafficking. This stuff has gone on for years. This stuff has gone on since the beginning of time. And it is increasing, unfortunately. And of course, raising awareness for human trafficking, for what's going on, is one of the best ways to defeat it. Learning how to spot potential victims, learning how these folks go after and get victims is very important for all of us to know. The more of us that are aware of what's going on, the better. If we can recognize it, we can stop it. I've seen online videos where we have, I guess you could say, guys going out targeting these traffickers, targeting those that would abuse kids, basically just to shame them, filming themselves going and meeting these folks. and just to shame them. And I like that they're doing that, because these people need to be. Someone that hurts kids, someone that does some of the stuff that's happening, they should know that there's no place for them to hide. Now, unfortunately, what you don't hear from the movie, but you do hear them talk about in some of the podcast interviews, is how that, like, the war in Ukraine is really fueling a lot of human trafficking. I'm working on an article for my website at boomsticktactical.com to where I go into a little bit more of some of these cases. And one of the things that happens as far as traffickers getting victims is in major disasters, economic collapse, warfare, from what we're seeing over in Ukraine, and things like that. And that's where they're finding these victims in many cases. Desperate people doing desperate things, kids that are literally have nowhere to go. They're orphans because they've lost their parents, they've gotten separated from their parents or whatever. And that's how they're targeting them in Ukraine, in many places as well. We see in other parts of the world, we see some of these fake orphanages that get set up. And that's actually something that I was actually working on for my article just a minute ago, where these people will go in and get these kids, these traffickers, and set up these fake orphanages just to draw in donations. Everybody wants to help kids. They know that that's a soft spot for everyone. So by going in and setting up one of these orphanages and bringing in a bunch of kids, regardless of whether or not they're true orphans or not, they get a lot of aid money. They get a lot of people wanting to help, and they get a lot of money from people that want to help those kids, not knowing that those kids, in many cases, are victims of human trafficking. I know that there are organizations out there that are looking at trying to minimize that as much as possible, working to stop some of that stuff, but that is a reality of human trafficking that has not gotten a lot of play, a lot of, I guess you could say, warning to people. There's a lot of folks that have not heard about that aspect of it. And this is something that, there again, I've followed this stuff for quite some time, well before this movie. I have worked in media. Years ago, I actually worked for a local newspaper, and this is something that I was well aware of years ago. This is something that I have followed for many years because of what I do, what I have done, that sort of thing. And it is more prominent than most people talk about. The United States is the biggest consumer of human trafficking, unfortunately. These kids are often, Mexico, they're picked up or brought in through Mexico up to the United States. In many ways, Mexico and South America is basically the funnel that brings these kids into the United States to be victimized. And it is absolutely appalling. Some of this, there's politics that plays into it. We see what's happening with our borders, how open they are, as well as some of the other stuff that's going on. People flooding across our borders, virtually no check whatsoever. And if you would listen to what's going on with the border as far as these minors that are coming across, it used to be they would do some type of a verification that would connect the child to the adults that they were with, or they would try to as much as they could. These days, some of those kids that are coming across the border, if you do the research, and you'll see that in many cases, these kids, if they are sponsored or whatever by someone, or literally they'll just have a name. This kid needs to go to this person. And then they just ship them wherever. Our own Border Patrol is being used in many cases as a tool of human traffickers. That sounds like it's some kind of tinfoil hat stuff, but it's not. Go look it up yourself. In fact, that's why I wanted to talk about it. I want you guys to go out, look this stuff up for yourself, to know that this is real. This movie, as I'd mentioned, go see it. It's bringing awareness to something that needs to have awareness brought to it. It has exploded in popularity with people going to see the movie. And there again, this is a movie that the mainstream media hates. If you look up what some of these mainstream media outlets have said about it, they're calling something that was based on true events, documented law enforcement events. They are calling it a QAnon conspiracy. Literally, that has been the title from some of these mainstream media outlets. And that alone should tell you that the mainstream media has a major agenda that they're pushing. Jeffrey Epstein was real. These elites that went to his island to participate in human trafficking, they were real. There's a list out there. No one has seen that list because they don't want it out there. That Maxwell woman is in jail, convicted of it. Yet, the mainstream media, these big media companies, in many cases, they're saying that it is a conspiracy because there's unfortunately people out there that will simply blindly believe them saying that. That should tell you something right there. The movie is one that, if you have a teenager, depending on the maturity level of that teen, which it is rated PG-13, it is something that they should see. In fact, when we went and seen it, there were teenagers there. There were teenagers in the theater, even smaller kids with their parents. So that is going to be a judgment call on your part. But it is one that I believe that they should see as well, to get them aware of some of the risks that they face. You're going to see a lot of how this stuff plays out with many of these kids. And there again, they write the story in such a way that it is a very good story, and it is on true events. If you listen to the podcast, you'll see that they're true events. And the editing, the production of the movie in general is a great movie. They did very well in it. You hate the traffickers. You hate them. You look at these guys on screen, and they're just actors. But the way that they played their parts, trust me, if you have any decency to you about wanting to protect kids, you look at these guys on that screen, and you feel just an anger to them, because this movie is going to make you mad. It's going to make you worry, and it's going to make you sad. Different parts of it. That's something that a lot of people, everybody's basically saying that same thing about this movie. And, again, it's a very good movie, so I would highly encourage you to see it. But go beyond that. Listen to some of the interviews with folks involved. Learn the stories behind it. And then look to what's going on in the world around you. Because, guys, that human trafficking, right where you're at, I will guarantee you that it's happening. In the city you live in, I'll guarantee you that it's happening. Because it is touching every place in this country. I've heard of it happening, even where I live. Very rural area. It's happened around here. When there are major events, tourist events that draw in big crowds, that is a major human trafficking event as well. Here in Kentucky, they have the Kentucky Derby. Each year, there is always an increase in human trafficking because of the Derby coming to town, because of all the people coming into town. That's just the realities. But guys, go watch the movie. And soak it in. Listen to the podcast, listen to the interviews for the guys, and, get involved. All of us need to. Guys, thanks for watching. Check out the rest of the videos on the channel. Share this video. Take somebody with you to the movies. This is something, working together, we can help reduce it. There are more people enslaved today than in any other time in the history of the world. Guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.